So there was a lack of commitment to family. And you see this throughout history. Anytime a society or a nation, when they stop valuing marriage, when they stop valuing a family or they stop valuing children, that society tanks. It goes downhill real fast. And they have all sorts of problems. And everyone always points at these political things that happen. Oh, this is why would this happen or that happen. But the fundamental root cause was the deterioration of the family unit. Welcome to the Incredible Fathers podcast, where we liberate men from mental demons, build them into chivalrous and loyal husbands, and craft them into incredible fathers. Welcome today, my friend. I'm Philip Mason, your host. Delighted to spend some time with you today. We've got a really important topic, and we're going to kick things off here. I just want to share a story with you. And as we go through our time together, and when I'm talking about why marriage is supreme, I'm going to start off with this particular story. Happened to me, personal experience. This was in the Chicagoland area. I was with a big group of entrepreneurs and small business owners, and we were affiliated with a company. The company had flown in this guy from corporate, from Europe. It was a European company. And so we were in the evening, we're in this convention center at this nice hotel. And this man from corporate gets up and he introduces himself. To introduce himself, he actually has a picture of his family. So it's himself and his wife and his two children. So it's kind of interesting. He gets up and explains his family situation. And he says, we're not actually married, but that's not important. And he says, all marriage is a piece of paper. And he says, all that really matters is love. He says, love is what binds us together as a family, and that's all we need. And when he said this, he was kind of angry, anger hint to his voice. And he said it with a lot of passion. And I thought, man, this is really kind of strange. Like right out of the gate, he really wants to make a point with us that love is the only thing that matters in a family relationship, is what really binds the family together. And it really got me thinking, because immediately alarm bells are going off in my head when he said this, and like, wow, he's really missing out on some key things. Now, if we stop, let's digest this and think about this situation here a little bit and ask ourselves some questions. If he truly loved his girlfriend, because that's what she is, she's a girlfriend, he's not a wife, because they're not legally married, doesn't have that legal authority to call her a wife. If he truly loved her, wouldn't he marry her and make that commitment to her for all time? Wouldn't he? Now, another question. Does she really have a claim on him? And then the third question, does he really have a claim on her? From a legal standpoint, no. There's no commitment there. Any person can leave that relationship at any time. And that's all it is. It's a relationship. It's not a marriage. And unfortunately for those poor children, they don't have a mom and dad who are married, and they don't have the rights and privileges that go along with that legal marriage. So this this man, what he doesn't understand is that a marriage is much more than a piece of paper. There's a whole set of rights and privileges that come with that legal authority, that legal stamp of approval from the state, from the government. And there's a whole set of order and understanding and clarity and protections and safety that come under the law when you're married. So if you think about it this way, and perhaps this is a little bit different way, and perhaps you haven't thought about it. What if there's another man that loves his girlfriend as much as he does or more, maybe even less, but he now has a claim on her because he loves her? And what if she loves him back too? Does she now belong to him because they both love each other, even though she still has some children with her current boyfriend? What if he loves another woman and has a relationship with another woman? Does that negate his relationship with his girlfriend because he has love for that other woman? Does he now have claim on her because he loves her? Do you see how this can quickly spiral out of control and chaos can ensue? Because you love someone doesn't mean you belong to them. There has to be a legal connection. So when children are born into a marriage, they legally belong to their mom and dad, right? And their mom and dad belong to each other, right? There's that protection There's that formal coming together, that formal binding contract or covenant that binds that family together. And when you don't have that marriage relationship, who those children belong to becomes more complex legally. It becomes very difficult for judges to figure that out. And every state has different rules and laws for that. It can become very complex. And so in society would really crumble and fall apart if there wasn't a very clear, concise legal structure, legal framework for how a family is to be built out and who belongs to who, so that you have those protections of safety in place so that another woman can't steal your man or another man can't steal your woman or your wife, your spouse, your girlfriend, whatever she is, right? And we rely on that legal framework to define what a family is and to be able to give it protections in all different situations and all different aspects of society. So, for example, if you were to purchase a property, the law would recognize that as a husband and wife, you're co-owners of that property. Maybe it's some land or a house. Maybe it's a vehicle, maybe it's a farm, whatever it is, right? And this can certainly go to the case for, a divorce too, right? If those couple that married and they decide to go separate ways, there's very specific laws on what to do in situations like that when in an ideal situation doesn't become ideal anymore and people split. For example, I know having lived in Massachusetts has most of its laws are very much in favor of the woman. And really that's because it's really the man's responsibility to lead out and to be a leader in the home and to engage that relationship. And times it is the man who goes out searching and hunting for other relationships when he gets sometimes bored or tired of his wife or becomes distracted in his marriage has eyes for lusting after others. And that's the reality. Men have a tendency towards that, and it can pull us away from our spouse, which we shouldn't allow to happen, but it can happen. So the reason why the law is oftentimes in favor of the woman is because men are oftentimes the ones guilty of destroying that marriage relationship. And so the law protects the woman and makes it so that she's bound to that husband on very strict terms so that she can have her children and she can have rights to a great amount of the property and revenue that the man is entitled to or that they co-own together, and that she doesn't get stripped of that by the man, which historically in the past, a lot of times the law has been in favor of the man, and the man owned the property and the woman was kind of, stuck. And that's not just, in America, but that's throughout the world, particularly in Europe. And we see a lot of that. There's those legal protections that help preserve the family, help protect it, and they define it for other people around you. So society, the community, um, the municipality, the state, the federal government, they rely on that legal information to know who you are, what your identity is, and what your protections and rights are under the law. And that becomes very important. It's kind of interesting. I heard a story just today from a woman when she was a young woman. She was actually became homeless at 16. And her mother was involved in drug use. Apparently, dad was already out of the situation at this point. And she became a Christian and believed in Jesus Christ. And she lost a lot of friendships, and her family basically rejected her at that point. Her newfound faith was kind of what saved her. And a member of her congregation actually took her into their home and gave her a room and made her part of her family. And it's kind of interesting. She said, without that family structure, she says, I was just totally lost. Without that protection, legal protection of having a dad and a mom married together and joined in a family, she didn't have that protection. And she said she felt so lost and she felt like she didn't have anything. But this family that took her into their home and they made her part of her family and they adopted her. And once she had that family structure legally, she said it just opened up so many doors of opportunity, gave her so much purpose. And it actually made it possible for her to get funding and scholarships and federal grant monies to be able to go to college, to be able to gain an education, which in turn allowed her to find her husband and get married and have a family of her own and have her own structure. And it was all because of that legal framework that comes from marriage and building a family. And so going back to this man at this convention center that I was talking about, it is more than just a piece of paper. It's a whole legal framework for society because the family is the basic fundamental unit of any nation, any society. And without it, that nation crumbles, it falls apart. Things go to chaos very quickly when family relationships don't function well. So I honestly feel really bad for this man and his daughters and for his girlfriend because if he really truly loved them, he would be married to their mother. He would marry his girlfriend because that would demonstrate his total commitment to them, that there was no other woman out there that was more important than she, and that he was going to devote his whole life to her come hell or high water, right? And that's what you commit to with marriage. And and that's so vital and people miss that. And what's sad about this man is he's literally becoming a law unto himself. He's deciding that whatever he decides at any given point as to what constitutes a family is up to him and him alone. And he's literally throwing society to the side and saying, get lost. I'm not doing things your way. He's literally rebelling against the law. Now, that may sound really harsh, but I'm telling you, that's the reality. That's the position that he's taking. He's rebelling against these fundamental societal values that have sustained society for thousands of years. And he's saying, the law doesn't apply to me. It's not important to me. I can have what I want without the law. Now, the reality is, statistically and just from an experiential vantage point, where people are not married, those relationships do not last. When things get difficult, when people get sick, when they get injured, when there's not enough money, when they find someone else more attractive, more beautiful, more handsome, they leave. They leave that relationship because nothing's holding them there. There's no legal framework holding them in place. And so, yes, they may feel like they have some love there, and there may really truly be some love there, some real true affection. But it's not powerful enough and it's not lasting enough to be worthy of a true marriage. And if they really loved each other, like I've said before, they would get married. They would want the protections and rights of the law. They wouldn't want to have it any other way. Now, it's kind of interesting for those of you that have faith in God, and I know that for you listening today, I know that you do. It takes on a whole new dimension because in our society, we think of things in a lot of times in business terms. This is what's something that's really sad about our American society today is we view marriage oftentimes as a business contract. And to a certain degree, a marriage can be a contract for people. They literally write up a prenup and they do a contract and they say, this is what goes to you. This is what goes to me if we get divorced, if this doesn't work out. And if it doesn't, oh, well, it's been nice. Thanks for the partnership. And it's really more of a contractual marriage. But there's still a degree of commitment there up to a certain point. And I would very strongly suggest that this is not healthy and not good for our society. We see this a lot in pop culture, in the entertainment industry, in the sports industry, where oftentimes marriages are to help someone further their career, for example. There's many other reasons, many other motives as well. But really, for someone who's a Christian, for someone who has faith in God, has biblical values, in the case of myself, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe in eternal families and we believe in eternal marriage, which means we believe that God ordains marriage, that God's law states that marriage is between a man and a woman. And under God's law, not only does it last for time on this earth, but also beyond this life, beyond this earth life, into the next life where we return back and live with God. That marriage is eternal, it's lasting. So, for example, my wife and I, we were married legally. We went to the courthouse, we got our marriage certificate. The man who married us had his license from the state of Illinois, and he was authorized to perform marriages. So we got married legally by the law of the land. Very important, very critical, very foundational. We also, through our faith in Jesus Christ and God the Father, And through our religion and our church, we got married eternally. Now, we in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we get married in what we refer to as the house of the Lord or the temple. So we believe it's God's house. When we go in there, someone with priesthood authority from God, actually what we call seals you together. So a husband and wife coming together, they're sealed together, bound together under what we call a covenantal marriage relationship. And that covenant is between the husband and the wife, but it's also between the husband and the wife and God. So there's that direct connection to God. You're literally making that covenant with God to honor your marriage. It's legally binding, not just for this life, but for all eternity. So my wife and I got married under two different legal frameworks. One is for this life under the political or governmental framework of the land. And then the second is under God's legal framework, under his natural laws for all eternity. So beyond this life, my wife and I have a firm belief, firm conviction that we will be married and that our children will still belong to us in the next life because we did things according to God's law. And we have confidence in this life that we will still be married 20 years from now, 30 years from now, because we trust in the law of the land to protect us and preserve us as husband and wife and as the guardians of our family and protectors of our family, that the law will uphold our marriage relationship and will provide protections to our family because we're that fundamental basic unit of society. So two very important frameworks that we follow legally, and they're a huge protection to my wife and I, and it gives us great confidence, great courage to have feeling like God has us legally, he's got our backs legally, and also that our local government has our backs legally, and we're married. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to pull out my marriage certificate as proof um, to certain things. And it's very valuable. And I keep that marriage certificate locked in a safe. I don't want to destroy it. I preserve it. Now, I certainly could get another copy if I had to, but man, having that on hand all the time is very important. I don't want anything happening to it. And it's something we use it pretty often for legal purposes, having that marriage certificate. So my wife and I treasure our marriage. It's very important to us. I don't worry about my wife. Like, I know that she's loyal to me and she doesn't worry about me because she knows I'm loyal to her. But there's a high degree of confidence that comes from being married by the law of the land. And we have an extra degree of confidence, and that comes from being married under the Lord's standard, under the Lord's law, in that covenantal relationship, which is higher than that business contract that I talked about earlier. So my wife and I, we don't view our marriage as a business contract. Certainly we run the business of our household, right? But we don't view our marriage as a contract. We view it as a covenant with God. We promise God to live to a higher level, to raise our children in righteousness to follow him, and to be good contributors to our community and to society, and to be able to love our fellow men as God loves them. And that's how we raise our kids, and that's how we view our marriage. And guess what? We have a very happy marriage because of that. And that's why I'm here talking with you, is because I want you to be happy too. And I know that having a legal framework is what's going to make that possible for you. Okay, so let's move on here. This has been a great discussion so far, but I want to cover a few more points. I've been talking about how society crumbles or goes to chaos really quickly when there is no marriage, or people stop wanting to get married, or people stop wanting to have families. Now, it's kind of interesting looking at history, the American Revolution and then the French Revolution. They were bringing on new forms of government. The people were dissatisfied with the tyranny that they were experiencing. America freed itself from Great Britain. And shortly after there, France also pursued their own revolution. They rid themselves of their king. Now, the French Revolution turned out to be a total disaster compared to the American Revolution. And they literally went from tyranny to tyranny to tyranny. So they started out having a king. They got rid of the king and all of their aristocratic society. They took them to an execution block, and literally they lost their heads. It was a very, very awful situation. And so it kind of became a type of very violent, very bloody democracy. And this democracy never really had any real leadership, no real standards, and the people just did whatever they wanted, and it turned into chaos. And so it was ripe. It was a ripe ground for a very strong dictator to come in and take control of things. And thus enters Napoleon, and he took control of things and he became their new tyrant. And not only did he want to conquer them, but he also wanted to conquer the rest of Europe. And so on they went, and France was back at war again. So poor France, they suffered again and again and again. But here's the point, and this might be an unpopular point, but it was the people's own undoing. And I personally believe, and I believe there's a lot of evidence to back this up, but families in French society went down in importance. They dipped. And there was a lot of immorality and a lot of men not marrying, starting families, a lot of women who were with a lot of men and never had a family of their own. So there was a lack of commitment to family. And you see this throughout history. Anytime a society or a nation, when they stop valuing marriage, when they stop valuing a family or they stop valuing children, that society tanks. It goes downhill real fast. And they have all sorts of problems. And everyone always points at these political things that happen. Oh, this is why would this happen or that happen. But the fundamental root cause was the deterioration of the family unit. And I believe that was certainly the case during the French Revolution, that the people, they were unhappy, and a lot of their unhappiness was because they didn't value the family anymore. They didn't value marriage anymore, and they were just too free and open and immoral with each other, and that caused a lot of problems. And France has kind of had a reputation for this. It's kind of interesting. The great historian David McCullough, in his book, The Greater Journey, he actually talks about during the AIDS, France had this massive orphan problem. And it was because men and women were just going around and being very intimate with each other and having relationships with anyone they wanted to. And they were having babies and children out of wedlock. And so Paris, for example, had orphans running the streets all over the place. And it was a huge problem. And Paris had one of the highest orphan counts of any city in the world at that time, as far as records went. And it was just a really sad situation to see all of these children homeless without the care of a mother and father. And it was a big problem. A lot of poverty, a lot of people living destitute, a lot of women not having their needs met, a lot of men just doing whatever they wanted to do and not caring for women and children, which is their responsibility to do. And so the city morally deteriorated. Paris deteriorated, France deteriorated, and it's something they've struggled with. And I believe France is still struggling with this problem today. And while things at times have improved for France, this has been an ongoing issue. And I think the times that France has really prospered, they've really valued the family and they've blossomed. And certainly France has been a great friend to America since our beginning and since then. But America's had a great advantage, I think, over the French in a lot of regards because we've valued the family very highly and we've honored marriage covenants. Okay, I'm going to share one other story here to help illustrate my point. This is from someone that's very close to me. This situation happened recently, so I'm going to be careful on what kind of details I share. But this person told me that they have a boss at work at a major U.S. corporation. And this boss, he really enjoyed working with him. He was a great boss. He's one of his favorite bosses he's ever had. This boss had an affair with a woman. He was married and he had this affair. And this affair actually stretched on for a pretty good chunk of time, from what I understand. It was consensual. They both agreed to their relationship as it was. But something happened. So she, out of the blue, decided that she was tired of him and having this affair. And so instead of just saying, you know what, I'm done, it's over, go your way, I'm going to go my way, she didn't do that. And maybe there was some good reason for that. But from this side of the story, it was very consensual and they were on the same page for the most part. And then, so instead of just having him move on and saying, I'm done with the relationship, move along, she didn't do that. Her solution was, I'm calling the police and having the police come and arrest him. So that's what happened. The police showed up, arrested him. He was hit with some big charges, spent some time in jail. He lost his job at this major US company, a very good job that paid very well. And on top of that, his wife was very upset at him, as you can imagine, and she filed for divorce. And so, in one blow, from someone he thought he loved, he was now sitting in jail, and he lost his family, he lost his career, he lost his values. Everything just fell apart. It just crumbled underneath him overnight. He lost everything over making this bad decision of going outside the legal framework of his marriage. So let me ask you a question here. Let's think deeply about this for a moment. Did this man, did he really truly love this woman he was having an affair with? Let me ask you another question. Did this woman he was having the affair with, did she really truly love him? I think it's obvious that the answer is no. They didn't really truly love each other. There was probably some lust there and some hunger there, but did they really truly love each other? Did they really mutually want what's best for each other? No, not at all. Would you really call the police on someone that you really truly loved and have them arrested and have their whole life just totally destroyed? No, you wouldn't. But why was that possible? Well, it's because they were doing whatever they wanted to do. And when you do whatever you want to do, all sorts of consequences can come, especially when you're outside the framework of the law and you're disobeying the law and you're disobeying your marriage covenant and your marriage obligation. You're going to have some punishments coming your way. You're going to have some very negative consequences coming your way. And you can't run from it. You can't escape it. People think that they can get away from it, but you can't. It'll eventually catch up to you. And that's because marriage is not only the law of the land, it's also the law of God. So whether you believe in God or not, and I know you listening here today, I know that you do, but because you're obeying God's law, He will bless you, He will help you, He will protect you. But when you don't obey His law of marriage, He turns you over to the adversary and He will afflict you with the punishment that goes along with breaking His law. There's a curse that attends with breaking God's law. There's blessings that are attended to keeping God's law. So as a Christian speaking to another Christian, that's the truth. That's the truth. That's the reality. That's the importance of a legal framework. Now, I think this is a very powerful story. And if this man really truly loved this woman that he had an affair with, he would have never had an affair with her in the first place. He would have respected her space and let her be. And he would have honored his marriage covenant with his wife. Now, the honest truth is, men, what we see is very powerful to us, much so more than with women. And sometimes we run across attractive individuals who we are naturally just attracted to. And that's okay. As men, we're going to have that experience. And you just acknowledge it and just say, that's an attractive person. But it stops there and you move on. Because your loyalty, your heart is with your spouse. Your loyalty is with your God. It's not with this attractive person you just ran into. So you may have those feelings, you may have those emotions. They may come, you acknowledge them for what they are, and you move on. Because you're under covenant. You're under a legal framework. And you're protected. And you're protecting those that belong to you. Because this person that's attractive doesn't belong to you. So I hope this is helpful. I hope I'm painting a picture for you and understanding why it's so important to get married. And if you're not getting married, now's the time to get married. If you really love your girlfriend, then marry her, pursue her, date her. Dating's done with a very purposeful intent of deciding whether this person is worth spending your whole life with. My grandfather used to say, as a rule of thumb, you should date that person for at least a year before seeking an engagement. And I think that's really sound advice. Now, it's advice that I didn't fully take in myself. My wife and I dated for about 3 months and we knew right away, our situation just clicked. We were just extremely compatible. It was almost like we'd known each other for a lifetime. We were just so similar in so many different ways. So after 8 months of knowing each other, we dated really seriously for about 3 months. And then we had an engagement, which lasted for another 3 months. We were probably about 11 months, 12 months through the whole cycle. So that's unusual though today. But that's what happened in our situation 22 years ago. But dating serves a really real purpose, and unfortunately, in our society, dating has really tanked in a lot of different aspects. A lot of young people don't know how to date. A lot of the 20-something crowd, they don't know how to date, and a lot of times it looks more like hanging out or friends getting together, and there's just no one serious about forming relationships, which is very unfortunate. And that's got to change. Dating's got to become important in our society again. Dating serves a very important purpose of, am I going to enter into this legal framework? So once you've dated for a while and you're just like, I really like this person. We're really good friends. In fact, I love them and I really want the best for them. And I'd really like to spend forever with them. And then at that point, you get engaged. Um, as the song says, put a ring on it, right? You have to ask her. You have to propose to her. You're proposing entering to a covenantal relationship. For some of you, you may choose, a contract, which that's fine. If that's your situation, I understand. There may be some of those. But for you, my friend, listening tonight, it'll be a covenantal relationship. And that starts off your engagement. And then you're engaged for a period of time. And that period of time is really to judge, we're with this intent that we have. Are we truly compatible with each other? Do we really love each other? Are we committed enough to each other that we'll spend all time together and even beyond that into the next life for those of us Christians who believe in God's higher law of marriage? If not, you break off the marriage. If you don't feel like it's going to work out or you're not compatible or not everything's firing on all cylinders, or you find out this person's not who they purport themselves to be, which can happen. I have a wonderful brother that found himself in this situation, and I won't talk anything more about it, but man, it tore him up when he found out that this person wasn't what he thought she was. And this is not uncommon. A lot of people run into this, but that's good. That's what the engagement period is for, and is to be able to solve some of those issues before it goes to marriage. Now, sometimes people find out even too late after marriage. That can happen too, and that's unfortunate. Sometimes divorces can happen very quickly because of that. But that dating period and that engagement period should be able to help you determine if you're compatible, if you're going to work well together, and if it's worth spending that time together. You're going to make that legal commitment together. Okay. There's a great story in the Bible. And you're going to be familiar with this story. So this is the children of Israel. Moses is leading them, the great prophet Moses, and he's teaching them God's higher law, or at least he's trying to. Eventually, he implements the law of Moses as given to him by Jehovah. And there's a situation where the children of Israel are really struggling, and they've become wicked, and they're not honoring God's law. And so they're actually bitten by serpents, poisonous serpents, and they become very sick, and many of them are starting to die. And Moses raises up a type of Christ. So he has a serpent on a staff, and God tells Moses to tell the people, if you look and turn towards the serpent, the brazen serpent, you will be healed. So all they had to do was turn and look at the serpent, and they would be healed. Pretty miraculous. And that's what happened. Those that turned and looked were healed, and those that did not, who didn't have the faith to turn and look, they died of that snake bite. Now, marriage is analogous to this story. It's very similar. So marriage brings legal protection, God's protection. When you commit to doing things God's way, he will heal you. He will protect you. If you're not married, then you don't have that protection from God. So if we go back to the very first story I told about this man in this corporate, the convention center is telling us about his girlfriend and the family they had together, the children they had together, where they were cohabitating together. If you think about this situation very carefully, this man was unwilling to do a very simple task of going and getting a marriage license and being married by someone who could marry them. Very, very simple process. Doesn't take very long to fill out the paperwork. And I've married people before. I've had a marriage license before, and I've actually married people. And the process for actually marrying someone, it literally can last just a few minutes. Like, very super simple. It blows my mind why people don't get married, because it's very easy to do. But this man was not willing to do the very simple task of getting married to his girlfriend, even though it held the blessing of being healed, of being protected, of being preserved. He wouldn't turn his head and look towards marriage for the legal blessings it had. He was angry at it. He spurned it. He rejected the law, just like these ancient Israelites rejected the great Jehovah. They rejected Christ. They rejected God, and they were not willing to follow God's prophet. And so rather than turn and look at this symbol of Christ, they perished because they were poisoned. And that's what happens when people don't commit and they engage in intimate relationships that are ordained by God, and they don't do it under a moral framework or under a legal framework. And they literally poison themselves. This man was poisoning himself. He didn't realize he was doing it, but I could see it in him. I could see it in his accountants. He knew that he was going against the law. He knew that he was violating God's law of chastity, which means that there's no intimate relationships outside of marriage, which is a very important law from God. God's given us the superpower of procreation and reproduction, and that's really meant to happen within the bounds of marriage. And that legal framework protects that, and it protects everyone in that marriage. So let me just reiterate this one more time, and we'll close for today. This has been a great discussion. I hope this has been helpful. I think you can understand and feel how important this is by the way I'm talking about it. But think about this. If you've been in chemistry class and you've used litmus paper, well, marriage is a litmus test. Just like litmus paper, you can detect acid, right? And you can detect things that exist that you can't see. Marriage, the proposal for marriage, the engagement, marriage itself, it tests the other person's commitment to you and to God. For those of you in that covenantal relationship who are Christians and believe in that eternal aspect. But even if you don't, marriage is a very fine litmus test for determining if that other person that you believe that you love, you find out how committed they are to loving you when you propose that marriage to them. And that's why you have that engagement period. So if they are not committed, they won't move forward with that marriage. And you can, with a surety, know this person is not the right person for me because they're not committed to me and they're not committed to God over this situation. And that's fine. If that's the situation, move on. But if that other person says, you know what, you are really important to me, and I would really love to spend time and eternity with you and make this commitment and be married to you, then you know that you're on the right track and you've found the right person, and great things, great blessings will come to you because of that commitment. You're literally giving your whole soul, your whole self to this other person. And in my case, to God. My wife and I give ourselves to God in a covenantal relationship. Our marriage, we believe, is ordained by God. And we have that confidence, that great confidence because of the legal framework, because the law is in our favor, that our marriage will continue till we die. And it will continue after this life. And our children will be bound to us under that legal framework. What a blessing. How exciting. I can't imagine anything better. It is more than just a piece of paper. Absolutely. It's so much more than a piece of paper. And men, lead out. Find someone to date. Get married. Have children. Enjoy your marriage. Be committed to it. Don't have eyes for anyone else. Fear God. Because marriage it's his law. Marriage came from God. We've been doing it as a society since the very beginning. I literally believe that God married Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. The biblical account talks about Adam and Eve in the garden together. I believe God married them. He did it under his legal authority. There was no sexual sin in the garden. He married them. And from that time on, Adam taught that to his children. You get married under God's law and you raise children, you have family. And that's how the whole earth got here. I really believe that. And that's my Christian belief. And it's a belief that God ordained marriage and everything that belongs to it. And society has always honored that. The good laws of any land, any nation have always honored marriage laws. And people have bound themselves to those laws and receive great benefit for it. And it becomes the strength and power of that nation when they're legally binding families together. And I really truly believe this. And I've seen it with my own eyes. And we have thousands of years of history and experience to prove that this is certainly the case. My friend, thank you so much for listening today. It's been a great conversation. I hope something that I've said today has stirred your heart and helped you to think a little bit differently about marriage and why it's so important. Now, I know you might be thinking, I've tried dating. I can't find a good woman who wants to date or even wants to get married. And I get it. I understand. I know what our society is going through right now, and there's a lot of negative things going around on marriage. And a lot of people look down on it and they frown on it. But I'm telling you, we can change that. It doesn't have to be that way. And yes, there are a lot of women out there who don't want to have children. They don't want to be married. They don't want to have family. They don't want to have the commitment. They want to do their career. They want to do whatever they want to do. And that's fine. Let them go do that. If we can influence them to see the joys of being married and have the joys of having children, then that's great. That's beautiful. We should do that. But I can tell you that there are women out there who want to get married, who want to have children, who want to have that strong, abiding love and covenantal relationship with you through the framework of a legal marriage. They're out there. Go out there and find them. And I can tell you from personal experience, regardless what your denomination is, most of those women believe in Christ or consider themselves Christian, and they hunger after that. They want the blessings that God has in store for them for the family, and that can only be found in a marriage relationship. So go out there, don't be discouraged, pick yourself up, and go out there and present yourself well, and find someone who is willing to date and eventually to get married. And it may take some time, but don't worry, you can get it done. And granted, there are women out there outside of Christianity who desire these things too. They have the righteous desires to raise a family, and that's certainly the case. If you're not a Christian, other philosophies, other religions out there that certainly value the family, no doubt. In fact, most religions, most philosophies highly value the family. It's the great human tradition, right? It's how we all got here. The family is supreme. Marriage is supreme. There's nothing more important in society than good, wholesome, legal families. That's the reality. That's the truth. And that's why we're here talking about these things tonight, is because society's gotten away from that. And now's the time for us to step up as men, my friend, for you to step up, for me to step up, to start doing more to support families, to support marriage, to encourage societies to develop good marriages, good families. Because without it, everything goes to chaos. My friend, it's been so great to be with you today. Thank you for being here and for listening. It's been a great episode. I want you to just take a moment now or a little bit later to write in your journal about your thoughts on this episode. And then I would encourage you to share it with someone. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your girlfriend, maybe it's your future children that you don't have yet. Maybe it's the future girlfriend that you hope to have, and maybe you're going to write it in a letter and share it with them so that down the road they can know some of your thoughts on the importance of marriage, and you can have a great conversation over it as you're deciding to date or to get engaged. And I think that processing through the journaling will be very powerful, very helpful for you. And take time to share it with someone else. Let's spread the word and let people know how important marriage is and the family is, and how important it is to do it in a legal manner. All right, I'm your host, Philip Mason. Thank you again for being here, my friend, and we'll catch you on the next episode.